You know, when Mao Zedong stood up in Tiananmen Square back in 1949 and founded the People's Republic of China, you'd think that was it, the end of a long, brutal story. But the truth is, winning the war, that wasn't the end. It was the beginning of their biggest challenge yet.
And that's the real question here. I mean, winning a civil war is one thing, but inheriting a nation that's in a state of total, absolute collapse, well, that's a whole different ballgame.
So the prize for winning the war was, of course, all of China. The problem? The prize was broken. The CCP had just been handed the keys to a country that was shattered, chaotic, and just profoundly divided. I mean, just try to wrap your head around the scale of this crisis. After decades of non-stop war, tens of millions of people were dead. The economy wasn't just in a slump, it was in ruins. There was no real central government to speak of, which led to widespread lawlessness. Infrastructure was totally wrecked, and to top it all off, they were completely isolated from the West. It was a nation teetering right on the edge.
If you want to put that chaos into perspective, think about this number, 1 million. That's how many bandits and old warlord loyalists were still roaming the countryside. The new government's power, it barely stretched beyond the major cities.
And as if that wasn't enough, the economy was an absolute train wreck. Hyperinflation was so out of control that the money in people's pockets was basically useless paper. Food production had completely cratered, and the cities were starving. The entire country was financially paralyzed.
So how do you even begin to fix a nightmare scenario like this? Well, Mao's CCP came up with a pretty clever two-pronged strategy. You could call it the olive branch and the iron fist. First, they were going to stabilize things, and then they were going to dominate.
This really captures the whole idea, doesn't it? On the one hand, you have the olive branch. They're trying to cooperate, to reassure key groups of people. But on the other hand, there's the iron fist, just waiting, ready to suppress, to purge, and to control every single part of society with absolute ruthlessness. All right, so let's look at that olive branch first. See, Mao knew he couldn't just kick down the door and launch a radical revolution from day one. The number one priority was just stopping the country from completely falling apart. And that meant being pragmatic. And this united front policy was incredibly practical. I mean, for a hardcore Marxist-Leninist party, temporarily encouraging private business, that's a huge deal. They basically told the urban middle class, the people who actually knew how to run things, to please stay in your jobs. They got inflation under control by cutting spending and bringing in a new currency. It was a surprisingly moderate start, really, all designed to buy them some time and steady the ship before the real revolution kicked off.
But once that initial stability was there, the other shoe dropped. The iron fist of the party was about to come down, and come down hard, to crush any and all opposition.
And a key tool for this was the Danwei, or the work unit. This was, in a pretty terrifying way, a stroke of genius. Your entire life was now tied to your job or your neighborhood committee. They controlled your apartment, your food coupons, your permission to get married, even to have a kid. And most importantly, they watched you, constantly. The Danwei became the fundamental building block of a nationwide surveillance state.
When the Korean War broke out in 1950, it gave the CCP the perfect excuse to speed up this crackdown. They launched the Resist America, Aid Korea campaign. And let me tell you, this wasn't just about the war abroad. It was the perfect cover for hunting down supposed spies and counter-revolutionaries back home.
The result was a wave of pure terror. This number, 28,000. That's the estimated number of people executed as enemies of the state in just one province, Guangdong, during this campaign. They held these mass rallies to whip everyone into a frenzy of suspicion, turning neighbor against neighbor. Then came the purges. You had the 3 Antis campaign, which went after corruption inside the party itself, and then the 5 Antis campaign, which targeted the business community. Yep, the same people they had just been reassuring a couple of years earlier. The official goals always sounded pretty reasonable, right? But the real goal was to crush any group that had any power outside of the party. And the method they used was just brutal psychological warfare. Victims were dragged in front of these huge crowds for what they called struggle meetings. They'd be screamed at, humiliated, sometimes for hours, until they finally broke and confessed to all sorts of made-up crimes. It was designed to destroy a person's spirit, and it sent a terrifying message to everyone else. Get in line, or this will happen to you. So while they were locking down control internally, the CCP was also moving to secure China's massive and often rebellious border regions. They used military force, and they called them reunification campaigns. And they moved methodically across the map. First, they secured Xinjiang, this huge region in the west with a large Muslim population. Then, in late 1950, the People's Liberation Army marched right into Tibet. And finally, they mopped up the last pockets of nationalist support down in the southern province of Guangdong. Now, it's really important to understand that this was about way more than just political control. In places like Tibet and Xinjiang, which had their own unique cultures, languages, and religions, the goal was straight-up assimilation. The CCP wanted to systematically erase that local identity and impose Han Chinese culture.
The leader of Tibet, the Dalai Lama, made this desperate appeal to the United Nations. He called the invasion an unwarranted act of aggression and said it was a case of the violation of the weak by the strong. His plea, though, it just went unanswered.
And the methods used to achieve this control were just ruthless. In Xinjiang, for instance, a whole delegation of local Uyghur leaders were on their way to Beijing to negotiate. Their plane mysteriously crashed, killing everyone on board. Funny enough, their replacements quickly agreed to everything the Chinese government wanted.
So by 1953, in just 4 short years, the CCP had done what seemed completely impossible. They had brought order to absolute chaos. But the price of that order was total control. When you look back, you can see their playbook, this brutal but incredibly effective 4-step process. Step 1, stabilize the economy with pragmatism. Step 2, build a system of total surveillance. Step 3, wipe out all your opposition with terror. And Step 4, lock down the borders with the army.
And the end result of that whole strategy? It was this. From the absolute rubble of war and collapse, Mao and the Communist Party forged a new, unified, and powerful state. But it was a state built on fear, where the individual meant nothing next to the party. You know, this two-sided approach, that mix of pragmatism and pure terror, it didn't just end the chaos, it actually forged the DNA of the modern Chinese state. It created a powerful nation, sure, but one where the party's control is still absolute. And that leaves us with this huge, difficult question. How should a legacy that's built on both order and oppression really be remembered?